moviegoers, now seems like the appropriate time to finally share with you all the films I got a chance to see at this year's South by Southwest. How many did I get to see, you might ask? About 37 movies, plus a few short films. Nothing much.
No way.
But before I began my overly excessive trip through the cinemas, I participated in a pretty engaging one-on-one panel discussion with acclaimed filmmaker Guillermo del Toro and the subject of everyone's favorite internet meme, Ryan Gosling. The two mostly talked about Gosling's new directorial debut, Lost River, as well as the current rising success of diverse filmmakers, which del Toro addressed the only way he possibly could.
Lose what you are always as a source of pride, and wear it as a giant f*** you to the world when they tell you that you cannot do something.
After that was done, I quickly made my way to my first screening of the fest, which was Unfriended, a new age horror movie that follows a group of teenagers on Skype who get an unexpected visit from one of their recently deceased classmates. While I admired the technical aspects of the film, I never found myself anywhere near frightened or engaged with the story due to the lack of empathy I had for the characters. Not a terrible film by any stretch, but not a very memorable one either. Next film I saw was another horror movie of a different kind called The Final Girls, about another group of friends who find themselves trapped inside a 1980s slasher flick. It was funny, violent, and surprisingly sentimental at times, which is probably the last thing you'd expect in a film that feels like a cross between Friday the 13th and Last Action Hero. Then I concluded the first night with The Invitation, which is not a horror film, but a slow burn thriller about a man who grows very suspicious of his ex-wife and her new husband's reunion party. It's not so much a psychological thriller as it is a meditation on grief and the desperate measures most take to overcome them, which was part of the reasons why I found this film so endearing. The next day, I went ahead and watched a grand total of 5 movies, including Creative Control, a comedic satire on how technologically advanced our society has become that's actually a lot cleverer than I originally gave it credit for, 6 Years, a depressing yet well-made drama about a young relationship that finally reaches its breaking point, The Boy, an unsatisfying character study of a mentally unstable adolescent, Fresno, an extremely funny dark comedy about two estranged sisters who go to great lengths to dispose a dead body, and finally, the aforementioned Lost River, which was probably the most disappointing film of the night. True, there are moments here and there that showed how capable a filmmaker Ryan Gosling can be, but as far as the narrative was concerned, it just came across as kind of a convoluted mess and as a result left me feeling rather bored. Sorry Ryan, no hard feelings. The third day, I decided to shake things up a little bit by attending a quick screening of 11 original animated short films, all of which I admired for thinking more outside the box than the large majority of feature-length movies that tend to come out nowadays. But in order to save on time, I won't go into full detail on what I thought of each one, so instead I'm just going to rank them all from my least to most favorable. At number 11, we have Pig. Number 10, Half Wet. Number 9, All Your Favorite Shows. Number 8, Buddy Yourself. Number 7, Bottom Feeders. Number 6, Hole. Number 5, Lava. Number 4, Palm Rot. Number 3, Road Trip. Number 2, Teeth. And number 1, World of Tomorrow. Check them all out, you won't regret it.
Look, I draw a triangle.
I drew a snake, boy.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.
Okay.
Later on, I went back to my daily feature-length movie schedule with 3 new films, beginning with a very funny, albeit pretty long work-in-progress cut of Judd Apatow and Amy Schumer's Trainwreck, followed by the equally hilarious Melissa McCarthy espionage comedy, Spy, and finally ending the night with a surprise midnight screening of Furious 7. As a longtime fan of this ongoing series, this movie had everything I could hope for in a Fast and Furious follow-up, from the ridiculous action set pieces to the final send-off the filmmakers made for the late Paul Walker, which left the entire auditorium I was in either holding back or completely drenched in tears, myself included. The fourth day, I saw another round of 5 movies, starting with A Woman Like Me, a powerfully moving documentary about a woman with cancer who directs a fictionalized account of her current illness. It definitely wasn't the easiest movie I saw at the fest, but it was most certainly an honor and a privilege to come and witness the final moments of what appeared to be a remarkable human being. Now, after seeing something as emotional as that, one would deem it wise to even out the rest of the day with something a little more upbeat, which was not the case with my next film, Krisha, about a recovering alcoholic visiting her family for Thanksgiving. Kinda like Christmas Vacation, if it were directed by Darren Aronofsky. The movie later on claimed both the Grand Jury and Audience Awards for Best Narrative Feature of South by Southwest, and while it is a fascinating and very well made character study on such a troubled individual, I didn't think it was anywhere near being the best of the fest. Thankfully, the next film I saw was slightly more cheerful, despite its grim subject matter, which was Uncle John, a movie that somewhat blends together two separate films that could not be any more different, one of them being about a blossoming romance between two co-workers, and the other about an elderly man discreetly covering up his heinous acts from unsuspecting friends and neighbors. As bewildering as that sounds, this one actually turned out to be a pretty engaging and cohesive narrative, which is probably the least that anyone would say about our next film, Get Hard, which pairs the likes of Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart in a raunchy comedy that sadly comes across as racially offensive and overtly homophobic. But did I get a few laughs out of it? Sure. But like most comedies nowadays, I'm probably not going to remember this one in the long run. Which brings us to the final film of the night that has most certainly stood the test of time, The Road Warrior, the second installment in the post-apocalyptic Mad Max series. Director George Miller was there in attendance to not only introduce the film in glorious 35mm, but also present two exclusive clips from his latest film that also happens to be my second most anticipated movie of the summer, Mad Max Fury Road. Before he left, he shared with us his experience making both films, answered a few audience questions, and was kind enough to sign my Blu-ray copy of the original Mad Max trilogy. The fifth day, I only saw 3 movies, starting off with probably the best documentary I've seen in quite some time, Best of Enemies, which recounts the infamous late 1960s debates between two of the most prominent political figures of that time, Gore Vidal and William F. Buckley Jr. Being both a wickedly funny and highly informative retrospective on two men who changed the course of televised news, this film has easily earned a shot at making it onto my best of the year list. Next, I attended a very special St. Patrick's Day screening of the atrociously bad direct-to-video film Leprechaun 3, presented with a live and hilarious commentary by comedian Doug Benson and the members of Austin's Master Pancake Theater. The viewing was so much fun that I made everyone, including myself, more than stoked to come back next year for their interruption of Leprechaun 4 in space. After that, I concluded the day with a midnight showing of Turbo Kid, which takes a retro spin on the post-apocalyptic genre, where all that's left in the world are remnants of the 1980s. Despite it featuring an excessive amount of violence and gore, the movie somehow manages to maintain a certain level of charm and childlike innocence that many fans of low-budget B-movies won't help but find irresistible. The next 3 days, I saw 5 movies each. And to save on time once again, I'm going to speed through most of them all as quick as I can, starting with Deep Web, the intriguing follow-up to director Alex Winter's even more intriguing Napster documentary, Downloaded, which follows the arrest of the alleged creator and operator of the black market website, Silkwood. While I wouldn't rush to call it one of the better docs I've seen, it was eons more compelling than Heaven Knows What, a movie that follows a group of reprehensible heroin abusers that I think was supposed to be a cathartic moviegoing experience, but wound up being one of the most insufferable films I've seen not just at the fest, but so far this year. Luckily, things picked back up with a third movie, Lamb, about a man who takes a young girl he barely knows on a life-changing road trip. The film walked a pretty thin line between being a genuinely sincere and undeniably creepy picture, and somehow manages to succeed due to the strong level of acting talent on display, particularly from child actress Una Lawrence, whom you could definitely expect to see more of in the near future. The next 2 remaining films I saw for the 6th day were Peace Officer, a fairly decent, albeit slightly drawn-out documentary about a man on a mission to take down the SWAT team he founded that unjustly killed his son-in-law, and Ava's Possessions, an overall passable horror comedy about a young woman recovering from her recent demonic encounter. After a good night's sleep, I continued onward the following day with The Goob, a coming-of-age film which I found to be alright, especially once you get past the extremely thick English accents. Twinsters, another excellent documentary, this time chronicling the lives of 2 young women on opposite sides of the world who may or may not be twin siblings, and Results, a very enjoyable rom-com about love, fitness, and everything in between. The next film I saw after that was South by Southwest's Super Secret screening, which many had believed to be either a rerun of Furious 7 or an early screening of Mad Max Fury Road, but instead, we got to see the world premiere of the re-release of the 1981 film, Roar, dubbed as one of the most dangerous movies ever made due to the fact that 70 of the cast and crew members were fatally injured while filming scenes with real and untrained lions, tigers, and other deadly cats. Simply put, this was one of the most surreal and baffling moviegoing experiences that you really have to see to believe. But the madness didn't stop there, as I quickly followed that up with the extremely disturbing The Corpse of Anna Fritz, about a group of friends who get a little too friendly with one of the hospital morgue's new arrivals. Then I moved on the next day with Made in Japan, a phenomenal documentary on the life of Japanese country singer Tomi Fujiyama, who also happened to screen the film with us right before closing off with a live music performance, which got a huge standing ovation at the Alamo Ritz. Then I closed out the day with 4 more titles, including the subpar science fiction horror film The Diabolical, the delightfully funny Manson Family Vacation, the largely forgettable I Dream Too Much, And finally, the science fiction thriller Ex Machina, a masterfully written and thought-provoking examination on the prospects of artificial intelligence that also happens to be my current pick for Movie of the Year. For the final day of South by Southwest, I capped things off with Rolling Papers, a hilariously insightful doc on Colorado's first year of legalized pot, then made my way to the live podcast show of Doug Loves Movies, where Doug Benson and his friends played movie trivia to help win prizes for various contestants, then caught a screening of the bizarre yet undeniably hysterical sex comedy from Australia, The Little Death, which delves into the lives of 5 suburban couples where each member has a strange sexual fetish or fantasy, and the end results are absolutely priceless.
I'm afraid it's bad news.
Well, I have been a very bad girl. Perhaps you need
You
to...
have hepatitis.
Well, that's not very sexy, is it?
No, it's not.
And the last movie I saw at South by was A Brave Heart. Not that Braveheart. No, I'm talking about the Lizzie Velasquez story, which recounts the titular young woman's journey from being a victim of both physical and online ridicule to a new leading advocate for anti-bullying. It was one of the most uplifting and inspirational films I came across at the fest, and one that I can't wait for everyone to get the chance to see once it's officially released. And that was my 2015 South by Southwest film recap, which in my opinion was not quite as good as the first 2 years I attended. In fact, it probably would have been a bland and forgettable year had it not been for the various people I got a chance to meet waiting in line, and of course, all my friends and colleagues who attended the screenings with me. Here's hoping we get to do it all over again next year, but until then, I'm the host, and thanks for watching.